if you guys start, people will start showing
Everyone
up.
will pop in.
Murphy's Law. It's Murphy's Law.
I like that. Let's stick with it. Okay, so then welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Kempton. I'm the Environmental Education and Garden Manager at the Cortlandt Park Alliance. And welcome to Speak Up. This is our 27th Speak Up and the first time we've done it through a virtual setting. I hope everyone has had a good morning so far, that you guys have been able to kind of pop in and out of some of the virtual tabling rooms. If not, all of the links for the organizations will be on the website. You guys will get to check out the other organizations that have been here for today. We are going to record today's session. If you don't want your picture on here, if you don't want your name on here, you can just change the name and turn your camera off. That's fine. If at any point you guys have questions, we're a fairly small group, and I trust you all to unmute yourselves and ask a question at any point, or go ahead and type it in the chat. While I'm presenting, I don't see the chat too easily, but Christina is here and she'll be checking the chat also. And then once I stop sharing, I'll be able to scroll through the chat and answer any questions. And yeah, so everybody's good. Let me see, are we recording yet? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So yes, please in the chat though, do write what you think the oddest piece of trash we have found in the park, or the oddest piece of trash you have found in the park. All right, so like I said, this is the Cortlandt Park Alliance, and we're talking about the trash that we have found in the park over the last few years. And we're gonna just kind of dive into that real quick. So our agenda today, welcome and introductions, we've already moved through, and I'm just gonna really quickly go through what we've been doing the last few years in the park, what we've found and how it can affect the ecosystems in the park, how you guys can help, and then we've got some question time for you guys to ask me any questions that you have. So what we are doing. So right now, look at that, Murphy's Law, people are already joining us. So what we've been doing. So the Cortlandt Park Alliance, through a grant with the Department of Environmental Conservation, has received a couple of grants over the past few years. And what we focused on is collecting, sorting, and assessing the trash inside of Tibbetts Brook. So we have installed a trash boom in the northern border of the park. And so that's what the picture is right here. For anyone who's unfamiliar with Tibbetts Brook and Cortlandt Park, Tibbetts Brook is a water body that flows through the park and fills up Cortlandt Lake. So it's flowing into Cortlandt Park from Yonkers. And a lot of the trash that we end up with in Cortlandt Park is either coming from Yonkers flowing down the brook. It's coming off of the highways. In this picture, you can't see it, but literally right outside of the frame is the highway. So we have a lot of trash that's blowing in from the highway, that's washing into this stream and making its way into the forest and into the lake of the park. So what we've got pictured there is our trash boom, and it's just a floating barrier, and it's just physically stopping the trash from flowing down into the brook. And we get out there about once a month to empty and sort and see what's in there. Over the past year, we've worked with over 370 volunteers. As we know, COVID has kind of changed the way things work, and with smaller budgets and budgets being cut this year, we have had exponential growth in the people who are actually using the park. If nothing else, COVID has taught us that parks are very essential, and being outside really just benefits you. More people, less budget and staff to clean the park led to lots of trash problems this year. So we have worked with over 370 volunteers. We have picked up hundreds of pounds of trash and helped and supported the staff of the Parks Department with ourselves and with volunteers, and really gotten out there to make the park usable for us. All right, so I have a little video. So this is one of the days that we were out at the trash boom. And this is just a quick video of what we have found as we're emptying the boom. So it involves getting out into the brook, scooping up what's there with the net, bringing it back onto shore, and sorting it out. So I'm going to take a minute so that we can watch this. Okay, so that was a quick time lapse of one of the days sorting out the trash. So I'm going to ask you guys to just unmute yourself really fast. We have had a handful of people just join us. So for those of you who have just joined us, welcome. We're kind of just beginning to go through the work that the Cortlandt Park Alliance is doing in the park. I still have people coming into the waiting room. So I want to just give people a chance to unmute yourself. Let me know what trash it is you just saw me sorting out there. So what kind of trash do you see right here in this video? Go ahead, unmute yourself and just jump in with an answer.
Soda cans.
Bottles.
Bottles, yeah.
Bottles.
Styrofoam.
Yep.
Look like some cans as well.
Anybody else with a good eye notice anything smaller or different?
Looks like
Is it paper towels or
shelf?
paper?
So the answer is all of the above. This is the picture on the left is the still shot of that video, and then the other picture is a different day that we were out there. And yeah, you guys are all correct. We're seeing an abundance of plastic water bottles. We're seeing some different cans and bottle and glass bottles as well. We're seeing a lot of styrofoam. And styrofoam poses lots of problems, and we'll get into that in a second. Some of the more interesting things are lighters or plastic shopping bags. We've got some straws, some cigarette butts thrown in there. You can see in this picture at the left, we've got some like baseballs or softballs in there. So we do find some kids' toys that make their way into the brook as well. Someone has their hand raised. You can just unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah, my question, it looks like, are there any syringes as well?
So I realize in the picture over here that does look like a syringe. That one's a straw. We have in the past, I believe, found either wrappers or little bags. I think we did on one occasion find 2 syringes. It is not a very common occurrence, but we are an urban park. There are a lot of people that use the park, and it does happen that occasionally we come across that. In the brook, we have not come across it too much. What the boom is really collecting is a lot of the floatable trash. So a syringe won't necessarily float, so it might have just been caught up in other stuff. But what you're seeing here is actually a straw.
I see. Okay, this is one thing.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
There's a lot of styrofoam in there. Is there a sense of, the source of it? Does it look like broken up coolers? Does it seem like packaging material, insulation?
Yeah, so as I was looking through all of our data and as I was looking at the pictures, I realized, yeah, there's a lot of styrofoam, and I questioned it the same way you did. Water bottles and stuff like that, I can understand people are using them, people are throwing them out. Styrofoam is not something that you generally use in everyday life. But styrofoam is also something that really never decomposes. So that styrofoam might be 10 years old, that styrofoam might be 20 years old, that styrofoam might be 1 day old. We just don't really know how long it's there. And I don't know generally where it's coming from. At this location, we are right at the Bronx and Yonkers border, and the majority of the stuff we're catching here is actually blowing in from the highway or coming down Tibbetts Brook from Yonkers, but a lot of it's really blowing in from the highway. Unfortunately, people drop things from their cars or garbage bags end up being destroyed along a highway. And we've got a lot blowing in from the highway, but styrofoam is becoming one of these massive problems in the park. And even as you pick up the styrofoam, it's crumbling up into smaller and smaller pieces. And we'll talk about that in a second when we start talking about just the effects to the ecosystem of all of this trash. But that styrofoam really doesn't go anywhere. It just sits there. It might break down physically, but it's still in the ecosystem and harming things. And you guys came up with everything that's here. Really, we're finding a lot of the single-use plastics. It's those plastic bags, water bottles, candy bar wrappers, chip bags, straws, and lots of styrofoam. We have come across a good number of cigarette butts or vape lighters, and also the glass bottles, toys, sanitary items, metal cans. So what this means for the park. First of all, it's unsightly, it's unpleasant, it's not something you want to walk through. The picture there is from last fall, and that's before we put in the trash boom, and it's slightly farther down Tibbetts Brook. So as we're collecting once a month from the trash boom, we're stopping all of this floatable trash from entering the rest of the system. Without us doing that, this is what piles up. And this is still along close to the highway, but this is what these sites will look like. It will just be a constant influx of these bottles and cans that nobody wants to walk past and nobody wants to see when they're out in the park. Microplastics. I mentioned before that that styrofoam is breaking up, and these plastic bottles are also leaching microplastics into the ecosystem. So these can be neurotoxins to some of the wildlife. These can be ingested by the wildlife. Animals don't look at it and go, oh, this is plastic, I can't eat this. They go, oh, what's this? And they try it. So these substances ingested can be really harmful to the fish, the birds, and the other wildlife that's in Van Cortlandt Lake and in the park. Excess garbage in the waterways just creates toxic water. Some of these are slowly degrading. We do sometimes end up, we mentioned before, maybe cardboard or paper boxes and more biodegradable trash. Even if that's breaking up inside of our lake, we don't want that breaking up inside of our lake. So even some of these biodegradable human trash components, we don't want biodegrading inside of our lake this way. So this can definitely just harm the water. It changes the pH of the water, it puts chemicals into the water, and all of that affects every animal and plant that's in the lake. And at some point, you end up with even a smell or unpleasant algae blooms that humans don't enjoy in the lake either. Small animals can climb into bottles and jars and get stuck, and we see this in pictures all the time. The animals that get their heads or feet stuck in the plastic rings from soda 6 packs, or a crayfish can crawl inside of a bottle and if it happens to get stuck, can't turn around, it can die inside of it. A lot of small insects will start laying eggs and using some of these floatable trash, but it doesn't mean that it's what they should be using, and it doesn't mean that it's healthy for them.
Sarah, when you guys have done water testing, have you tested for any of those, I think they're called microbeads and plastics that a bunch of manufacturers were putting in stuff?
So I do not know, and I believe Alex was on here and he might actually be able to answer. What we've been testing for these last few years is more just the water. So we're testing things like the pH, the temperature, the salinity in the lake. I don't believe we've specifically done microplastics yet, but it is something that we're looking into.
Sarah,
To work into not only our research, but to work in possibly with the high school groups. And I think Alex just jumped on.
so just to cut in, we haven't done any microplastic sampling, but it would be interesting because filter feeding organisms can be sort of a sentinel for that. So everything from the fingernail clams to some of the mussels that we have in the system would actually be a good way to surveil for these things in the future.
Yeah, it's something that we've started talking about, and something that I'd love to work in with high school groups who are coming out into the park and researching the lake, just as something we don't think about. I can see a plastic bottle in the lake and go, oh, that doesn't belong there, but I don't see the microplastics. And I think what happens is it's these invisible pollutants that we don't notice, that we don't think about, and are doing a lot of damage that we're unaware of. So we definitely want to make sure that people understand that even if you don't see it, there are effects to this trash being in the lake that we just don't see right there on the outset of it. All right, so quickly, what you guys can do to help. And hopefully everyone is making sure their trash ends up in the right place. And this is a really common sense thing that people should be doing without even being told, but you would be surprised how many people are not. So just make sure that as you're responsible for yourself and your choices, that you're getting your trash to the right place. Sometimes there isn't a trash can in the middle of the woods. A trash can in the middle of the woods requires somebody to get out to the middle of the woods to empty it. So you're not going to find it in the middle of the woods. So you have to remember that whatever trash you're carrying in, whatever items you're carrying in, even if it's a tissue that's biodegradable, it shouldn't be degrading in our forest. So if you carry it in, carry it out, bring it out with you, throw it out in one of the trash cans at the borders of the park. Volunteer and invite others to volunteer with you. If you've already volunteered with us, thank you. We love having people who volunteer also participate in other aspects of our organization. If you've never volunteered with us, come. Invite friends. Things are more fun when you've got your friends with you. And we've got a lot of volunteer days that are focusing on Tibbetts Brook and focusing on maintaining Tibbetts Brook and focusing on getting out here and really working to pick up the trash in the park. We've had, the Van Cortlandt Track Club come out here, and we've had special citizens come out here and different groups come out here and just work with us to really clean up sections of the park. And nothing that we're doing is going to matter as much if we're not having the community step in and help with us. Donate to your local parks groups. You don't always have time, but if you can spare a donation, it helps us buy those lovely trash grabbers and garbage bags that you see in the picture here. And it really helps us reach more people. This year, we had a lot more people volunteering to clean up the park than in past years. And we really just need to be able to support them to do the work that they're doing to help us. And then just lastly, use less. If you don't have to buy a brand new plastic water bottle today because you've got one at home you can refill, please buy a reusable water bottle. Don't use the plastic shopping bags, use a reusable one. demand less packaging in places. Individually, we can all only do so much, but collectively, as we make these choices, it really does add up and have a huge impact on the park and on the environment, and just really putting pressure on organizations to create less trash in the first place so that this isn't a problem. We've only got but so much land to dispose of our trash on, and quite frankly, filling up land with landfills of trash is just not the best use of the space that we've got. So if we can just create less waste as humans and use that land for better purposes, it would just be better in the long run anyway.
Hey, Sarah, I'm
Yeah.
just going to interject. There's a new program that NYC Parks is going to be rolling out this spring called Litter Ambassadors, which is probably even new to you, Sarah.
Yes.
So we're going to be rolling that out, and as the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance, we will be supporting that effort too. So hi everybody, I'm Stephanie Ehrlich. I'm the park administrator. So I am a Parks Department employee, and I am also the executive director of the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance. So these are ways in which the two organizations work together, and we as the Alliance support the work of parks.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things, and like Stephanie just said, there's new programs coming up every day. We started this past year our Vital Volunteer program, and we received, I think, twice as many eager community members to come out here and adopt a trail than we anticipated. So the community input this past year to really help us in maintaining this park has been overwhelming and greatly appreciated. And there are still just so many other ways to help. So I'm going to open it up to questions and comments real fast. So you can, I'll scroll through the chat quickly, but anybody who has a question or a comment can go ahead and just unmute themselves and jump in.
I'm curious about in the parade grounds, especially after like a holiday weekend, the trash cans themselves will be overflowing where there's like bags and piles of trash around it. So like when I go to throw away my trash, there's not even a trash can to really throw my trash into. Is there like some sort of scheduling issue or just not enough people working in the park to dispose of the trash cans, or how's that work?
I would say that it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
But for sure, this past summer, first of all, we saw unprecedented visitation. Anecdotally, we were seeing double our regular numbers, and it was intense. And obviously, in terms of the pandemic, there were no options. You know, the park was literally the only game in town. It was the only place people could gather. So we saw an enormous uptick in the amount of trash. So that's first of all. Second of all, we had huge cuts from city government in terms of our budget. So we did not have anywhere near the amount of seasonal staff at parks that we ordinarily have. And that was really challenging.
Less than half, in fact.
Yes, so it was huge. There was, I think, an $84 million cut to the Parks Department budget. So it was a devastating convergence of factors: more visitors, fewer staff. And then just in Van Cortlandt Park, we've had some issues with our garbage truck, which we call a packer. So that's made things challenging as well. One of the things that the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance was able to do was we were able to hire some seasonal part-time staff to at least help with the removal of trash. We were boots on the ground, so to speak. And obviously the volunteer assistance has been crucial, really, really, really important. So we're going to continue with that. We're seeing some signs that it may be better for us this spring and summer in terms of seasonal staff. Our fingers are crossed there. But one of the things that you can do actually to help is volunteer, but also donate to Van Cortlandt Park Alliance. If you support our work, we are able to hire some seasonal staff. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think now that we really have a better idea of the park usership during the pandemic, Last spring, we were kind of just going as things happen. And now we really all realize, and we knew it already, but we've really seen the effects of a pandemic on a public park. We've seen the increased usership of the park, and we can now anticipate for this year coming that we're going to need volunteer days. So our volunteer days are going to be pre-planned this year and not in response to the trash, but getting it before it becomes a problem. We've already got our Vital Volunteer program in place. So they're out there, you know, even through the winter doing this. So we're definitely just being proactive this year and getting out there and doing as much as we can. So I have a question also about the microplastics and dealing with microplastics. And there was, and I don't have updates on it, but I know that there are organizations and companies that are looking into making more sustainable and biodegradable plastics. I know in 2014, and what is it? It's the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. They were actually developing a biodegradable microbeads. So I don't know where that research has taken them at this point, but people are beginning to realize that microplastics are an issue. And I think there is some effort to study that further and find out safer ways to dispose of these microplastics or develop different types of plastics that aren't going to give us this type of issue. Yes, volunteers have been amazing. I thank you guys. And I think all of the other questions in the chat have more or less been answered. And really having you guys out there and letting us know things are happening is a huge plus. I've been out there during these park beautification days, and we've been cleaning up the trash in one section of the park, and we've had people come over to us and tell us that the trash cans have been flipped upside down on the other side of the park. So it's realizing that we're only so many people and can only be in so many places at once, and letting us know what's going on. We might still take a minute to get to it. We might need to put things in place to address it, but it's just letting us know. You guys multiply our eyes and ears and hands in the park, and it's just really letting us know what's going on that we might not have seen and might not have noticed.
Sarah?
Oh, yes.
Hi. As far as the parade grounds and that area, I think everybody here on the Zoom was raised to take their trash with them, put it in your pocket, bring it home. So I don't think that this group is the problem. I think this group is the help. But I think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but there's a huge issue with the masks being thrown on the ground, and that can really hurt, you know, the animals. And that's a big problem. The Mylar balloons, that's another issue. I love to see families having a great time. I think it's wonderful to celebrate something, but those need to be banned in the park. And the message that you're giving us, that needs to be given to the people that are having a lovely time celebrating their, whatever it is, baby shower. Maybe a parks person can go over and say, hi, I'm glad you're having a great time. Would you like to volunteer?
That's literally what the litter ambassadors are going to be doing. Walking over to folks, asking them to volunteer and handing out trash bags so that they can pack up their trash. So you're on to something.
Yeah, because I would agree. We're here because we already have some sort of vested interest in even just parks in general. And it's really about reaching out to those people who aren't already interested, or the people who are coming into the park and picnicking. And what we see a lot in the barbecue areas is that it's people who don't necessarily live by the park. It's people who are getting off a bus or getting off a train. They're coming, they're enjoying themselves, they're walking away away without a second thought. And it is about getting to those groups of people and really investing in them. The fact that, you know, you might not ever come back to Van Cortlandt Park, but you're responsible to maintain it while you're here, and letting them know some of the effects of it.
Well, then, Sarah, maybe it's time, just as Central Park, you need a permit to play ball. Maybe it's time to have a permit to have a party. And
You
when
are
you have to
supposed
pay for
to,
something,
actually.
then it's a different, you act a little differently.
You do need a permit to have a party
Yeah.
of 20 people or more in the park. Again, this past year was such an anomaly in terms
checking
of,
permits?
what's that?
Who's checking permits? Because you know all that right by 242nd by the pool. There's like huge parties, and I can't
Huge,
believe those people have permits.
Massive.
Yes, so this was an unusual year. Again, this past year with COVID, we didn't have the same permitting process in place as we might have in a regular year. Things are going to be different this coming spring. I think that we should just look back at this year as a blip. It was not the usual. So we're going into this new season with different plans in place.
I definitely like the idea of the litter ambassador. I know as a private citizen, when I've tried to say something to other people and it becomes confrontational, like who are you to tell me? And you're just like, dude, we just want you to make sure you clean up the trash that you left. That's all. Or, you know.
Yeah, it's very important that anyone who we ask to perform this, that we give some training to on how to interact with the public, how to be non-confrontational, how to be friendly and engage people in a way that they will be willing to listen and perhaps be willing to act. We don't expect everyone to, do what it is that we're hoping, but it's an effort. Some of us have been doing this for years. We're going to give them some symbols of, recognizable affiliation with the city parks department. They'll have lanyards that identify them. They're going to wear orange shirts and they're going to give out orange bags so that we have a sense of how well this is going to work. This is a pilot program. It's based on stuff we've done all over the city in the past, and we're going to see how it goes, but we're hoping that we'll, at least put a dent in the amount of litter that's just spread around kind of irresponsibly.
Will they be bilingual?
That's the intent, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because we know that you need to be able to understand the information that's going out there. So that's definitely an issue. I see also just in the chat real fast, just about having enough receptacles, that people need to see them. And that's, I don't know if you've noticed, but this past fall, we started kind of corralling the receptacles together. And instead of having them kind of scattered all over the place, we've got one massive clump of receptacles. And even if you have to walk a little bit across the path to throw it out, instead of having it right in front of you, you have a very visible place to throw your trash. Because it's true, if I'm walking this way and I don't want to cross the path to throw it out, I might just throw it on the floor, or somebody else might just throw it on the floor. So the goal was to put a lot of receptacles in one place, make it super visible. There's nothing worse than kind of standing there with something and looking around and realizing there's nothing that you can find to throw it out in. So it was making them really visible in the park so that people know exactly where they are throwing their trash out, and making them just a little bit easier to find in that respect. And then there is some chat about rat research.
Chief Scoos, do you want to talk about rats?
Yes, I don't know
one of my
about rats
favorite
in the
things.
larger park.
Sarah, let's let Chief Scoons talk about the rats, because I think he's a pro.
Yes.
Wow, what a dubious distinction. Rodents are an issue anywhere where there are a lot of people. And like many other problems, they are, invasive exotics from another place, but they've adapted really well to living here. They reproduce very quickly. They eat almost anything that people leave, and when people leave a lot of food for them, they multiply even faster. So the way that you battle rats, you never kind of win the war, but the way that you achieve some kind of a standoff is to eliminate as much as possible the food supply. That includes food that's just on the ground. It also includes food that's containerized for them, like open top trash cans. We look at those as kind of rodent buffets. And then, you know, on the other direction, one of the things that we've been using lately to exterminate them is dry ice. We put it down into their burrow and then close the burrow up, and they are asphyxiated. It's a lot better than using poison, which everybody knows accumulates up the food chain and can have terrible effects on animals like raptors. As I say, it's always going to be a battle against rodents because there's a lot of them. They're very well adapted. The things we can do are make the food supply less available to them and be very aware of where they're living and exterminate them where they live. Did I cover everything you wanted, Stephanie?
Yes, and then some. Thank you.
One thing I've noticed is that because of the pandemic, people were bringing their food, bringing meals, not just a little hand-wrapped sandwich that I would make in a paper towel that I could put in my pocket and go home with, but people were bringing pizza,
Trays
boxes,
of food,
tons of stuff from Burger King. It was out of control. And I think maybe there needs to be a conversation with the local restaurants, because there's too much. I mean, there's just tons of garbage. I should not be picking up someone's pizza box. That's ridiculous. And wrappers from Burger King.
Yeah, it definitely was an issue. In the middle of the parade ground, I picked up an entire Domino's picnic one day. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much we can do in talking to the stores because they're not responsible once people take the stuff out. I do think it's a matter of, like you said earlier, actually, just making sure people are educated in what to do with their trash, having very visible and abundant garbage cans, so that people have a place that's easy to throw their trash out. And then we're also working presentations and stuff like this into the greater span of offerings that we have. So it's going to involve also, you know, talking to local schools, getting kids involved and understanding from a very young age what they have to do with their trash to make sure that this isn't a problem. And we've seen, you know, just lots of success in really educating kids to let their parents know, don't throw that on the ground, get that into a garbage can, and getting out into the park to make sure that they're understanding where to throw their trash. So it's just a lot of education, a lot of making this easy and accessible for people. And as the park is cleaned constantly, there's less likelihood of people throwing their trash down. A clean park is less inviting to dumping your trash in than a park that's already got trash in it. So it's really maintaining the park and keeping on top of this so that we don't have huge issues. And we're definitely working on all of that. Andrew has his hand raised. Go ahead. Can you hear us? You can unmute yourself, Andrew.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was wondering, do you have specially color, color coded garbage bags for recycling?
We use clear bags for recycling. There are recycling containers. We'll think about how we might include that in the rollout of the litter ambassadors. it's a very tough thing to get people to separate.
It really is. And I've seen even in smaller, amounts, getting people to separate their trash is, not that it's impossible, definitely not impossible, but it is much more difficult than it should be, in my opinion. When you've got something as big as the park, even with those separated garbage cans, it's difficult to get people to use the correct can for the correct item. But we definitely do have on the outsides of the park those separated recycled cans, and hopefully people are being intentional about where they're throwing their trash and getting it into the right bin. There was a question or a comment earlier from Deprater, and she asked just if it's possible to have like a refundable deposit for the party space or the barbecues and stuff. And currently you do pay for the permit for it. I would not be able to really comment on whether or not some sort of deposit or larger fee would be possible. I don't know if Stephanie wanted to jump in with that, but I didn't want to ignore that comment because it's definitely a valid point.
Chief, it looks like you're about to say something. Go ahead.
Sure. So our goal when we issue permits for people to have gatherings of, whatever type, is not to make it prohibitive to them, because then they just won't get a permit. So the administrative fee is $25 for a permit. It's not very high. If you're a nonprofit organization, we often will waive the permit fee, not, always, but in the event that someone we've had a bad experience with and they've made us spend a lot of time and resources cleaning up after them, we will charge them a bond, which they have to send us something like a cashier's check or whatever, means that guarantees that the funds are there until the event is over and cleaned up, and we'll release the bond if they didn't violate the terms of the permit. So that's something we can do. We don't do it, with first-time people, and we don't do it lightly, because our goal is to be inclusive, and we're not trying to make it difficult for people both to get the permit and to use the park property, because we want people to use it. We just would like people to be responsible.
Yeah. I see also a quick comment just about how the pandemic kind of increased the use of single-use water bottles. And yeah, we saw also the pandemic affected the plastic bag ban also, that we were beginning to compost in New York City. We were beginning to get this plastic bag, the reusable bags out. And the pandemic really did put a wrench and just kind of change all of this year. So hopefully as we get back to normal, water fountains are opening, reusable bags are possible, we do see another downtick in all of this single-use plastic. Okay.
Just curious, for all these volunteer events, I'm seeing it says, meet at 10 a.m. or whatever. Where do you meet?
So when you register for a volunteer event, we have all of that information that gets sent out to you. A lot of our events from last season, because we were focusing on picking up the trash from the barbecue area and around the lake and around 242nd Street, we were meeting over at the golf house and kind of just spreading out from that direction. But whenever you register for a volunteer day, you get all of that information sent to you, so you know exactly where and when you're meeting.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So the oddest thing we have found in the brook, I did not forget about that question. I'm going to play this quick video. We're going to let my coworker John answer that question and let you guys know some of the oddest stuff that we have found in the park.
So we found some odd stuff over the years in Tibbetts Brook. One of them is we found the top of a taxi cab and lots of other car parts. We've pulled out dozens of tires at a time in the brook. We've pulled out full trash cans that have somehow made their way into the brook. And these are things that aren't supposed to be here, and we want to actually remove them so we have a more natural habitat and something that you would find without human influence, or as much human influence as possible. So we found some odd stuff over the years.
Sorry. I'll just put it on that last slide. So yeah, so we have definitely found some pretty interesting stuff in the park. And I just wanted, in the chat, I've seen Christina has posted a couple of links to reach out to us, to send us emails. There's my email here if you have any follow-up questions. We still have about 5 minutes before the candidate forums start. If you have more questions, I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see everyone easier. If you still have questions, feel free to stay, ask in the chat, or unmute yourself if you wanted to start heading over